Good morning, everyone. Well, it's so good to be with everyone here today at CT State Housatonic. So I'm happy to be with all of you today. And for all of you who are at another campus, welcome and good morning. I'm happy that we're able to try to be together via technology, although as you heard me mention last time, my goal is someday that we're all physically, geographically in the same room, so that is still an aspiration. I'm happy to kick off the PD Day and welcome everyone back to the new academic year. Today is pretty exciting. We are going to be introducing the draft of our strategic plan and give an opportunity for greater input. So today we have an opportunity to give input into this, and I'm very excited to everyone to be able to give their feedback. We completed the structure of one college, but now we must become one college very intentionally, and we'll do that by having an opportunity to review the progress, our lessons, the 4 pillars, and see how your input will shape this plan and what we do next. So I really want to say that the summer goes by very, very quickly these days. I don't know about you, but I feel like we put a whole lot on the summer, and then next thing you know, I feel like we're talking about the start of the next academic year. So this time, though, I don't know if it's just because I've been in higher ed most of my life, but it just feels like this really is the new year for us. And it's really exciting to be able to come together, welcome a new group of students, welcome back our existing students, and have an opportunity to start the next academic year. So I'm very excited about that. We've got so many possibilities that we hold at the beginning of the year. But before we get into this, I want to ask you, and just like I did last time, take a moment, say hi to your neighbors, share something that you did this summer. I just want to give you an opportunity to be present with your colleagues. Well, clearly you all have a lot to talk about. So I know that you all have a lot to talk about. Just kind of start to wrap up here. It's actually really good that you had pretty vibrant summers. We probably need someone whistling in every room across every campus. But that's a good sign that you have a lot to talk about. And I'm glad that you're coming back feeling refreshed. And for those that have you been working over the summer, that hopefully you had a vacation in the midst of it. Here's a little bit of my summer. So on the left is Marley. Marley's our older dog. I guess she's about 8 now. And Luca, last time I presented, I think he was a puppy, a real small puppy. And actually yesterday he turned 1. So he is... he's a lot of ball of energy and very exciting. Probably if this was proportionate to my summer, I probably would have just had a bunch of beach photos. But my goal this year was just to have a chance to get to know Connecticut more. And as a water sign, you put me at the beach, even if I have to be there with a laptop and working or taking calls, put me near water, and it's a very calming effect. And then I wanted to include something that you couldn't miss if you were at my house, which is the top right photo is my wife's project of saying that she was going to create a garden. Now, when she told me she was going to create a garden, honestly thought she was getting a couple of planter boxes, and then next thing you know, there's a truck backing up with dirt, and I was like, okay, this is a lot more than I expected, and well, sure enough, it has, and it's produced tremendous amount of stuff, and most of what we have eaten this summer has all been from our backyard, which is pretty exciting. But I have to say, I don't think I could eat another cucumber. Like, I just, I was like, I'm done. So I reached that point. But anyway, it's just been nice to see her engaging in one of her joys as well. So that's a little bit about my summer, our summer, and I hope that you had some wonderful stories to share. So I want to start off today by recognizing some communications that went out. One is to recognize Provost Karen Hynek on her announcement of her retirement. She will be with us for this entire academic year through June 30th of next year. And I want to really just take a moment to thank her and really share that I think she's going to be a real loss to our community. She has built, the sort of Provost area for CT State. It's very difficult when you're stepping into an inaugural role and building something from nothing. And in this case, there was not that sort of central provost role, but the work of having to work across all of our campuses and build an infrastructure. I've experienced working with Karen in 3 different states. We weren't always working closely together, but we were always in the same systems of some sort, and between Minnesota, Massachusetts, and now Connecticut. And she's not only a very intelligent and strategic leader, but she's one that will be committed to the end. And so, we will celebrate her retirement this year, and I also want to thank her for her years of service. And then also, I want to congratulate Dr. Michelle Coach on becoming the 9th president of SUNY Morrisville in New York. And so her stepping into the college presidency is a really exciting opportunity for her. We're very happy for her. It will also mean another deep loss for our institution. I've known Michelle out of all the duties that she's shared as in her Dean of STEM role. I have got to know her very well through our workforce area, of which she's been truly instrumental in really helping to bring together employer partnerships across the state and engage in ways to deepen our workforce efforts. So I am proud to say that she is moving on to her next opportunity, and wish her well in that chapter as well. I'll talk a little bit more about positions later, but what I wanted to first focus on, and the bulk of my remarks today, is really going to center around the preliminary draft of our strategic plan. And the first thing, for those of you who are not at the Housatonic campus, you can see on this slide that we have this wonderful pillar structure. And also, you see parts of the helm of a steering wheel. For those of you that are sailors or boaters, know that really well. But I want to point out that these are 2 wonderful artifacts that came out of this strategic planning process. And I want to give a big shout out to Peter Bondas for his effort in bringing his artistic experience to this, and creating some visual artifacts that we have to represent our work. And you're going to have an opportunity to hear me talk a little bit about what our 4 pillars are as it relates to our strategic planning, but I wanted to note the visual artifacts too for the artists that are tuning in today. So today is not a finished declaration, and it's not the end of the conversation. This today is a reflection of the work that we have been engaged in all calendar year, and even some of the preliminary work in the beginning of the last fiscal year and last fall. And there's been a tremendous amount of work that I am going to do my best in summarizing for all of you. But also, today represents the day that we seek your input. You have had an opportunity to, if not participating on the steering committee, participate in surveys or engagement activities. And now here's an opportunity to also give some input into the draft of the strategic plan. So I want to talk a little bit about how it's organized, what this proposed 5-year plan looks like. And our breakouts today are not about the one opportunity that you have to give feedback. In fact, it's really the first opportunity. And it's obviously not expected that you have an opportunity to read the plan yet in full. So today's breakout sessions are to be able to get your initial reactions. Want to look at what has resonated with you, the kinds of questions that it raises, what is missing from the plan that you see that isn't there, or what other kinds of elements create some needed action. So this is about getting your first reaction. And we also recognize that people have a lot of different styles of how they digest information. And so some of you who are relational will appreciate the opportunity to chat with colleagues today. Others that are more interested in reading it quietly to yourself and processing thoughts there will have an opportunity to do that as well. So today, the goal is ultimately to bring the plan alive by gaining more input, both internally and externally with the partners that we shared it, so that we can move to the next phase of this process, which is refining the draft and then also beginning to add measures to it. So that's what we're gonna do today. But first, I really want to share a deep appreciation for how much work has gone into this process. And I say that with a deep amount of gratitude because we have had a steering committee of people who have volunteered to be part of this process and engage a fair amount of time over the last semester in reviewing a lot of information. To the co-chairs, President Mathis of our Capitol and Tunxus campus, as well as Professor El Vandermark, Professor Addis Nuntuck, co-chairing this process. My gratitude to them for leading this process. For the presidential fellows, Nicola Ricker and Antonio Santiago, who have contributed a lot of their time and energy and expertise in being able to help bring a lot of information together for better consumption, to be able to react to and to add and to make changes, and summarizing a whole lot of information. When you ask a college for feedback on something, you get a lot of feedback. And so trying to figure out how to take pages and pages of information and distill it down into something that people can consume and digest, and that does pull out the highlights and can accurately reflect, what was presented back to us, is a big undertaking. And so they've also contributed a great deal for that. And then the committee itself, who has reviewed evidence, led engagement sessions, served as campus liaisons for different processes, and then also spent their summer working on the development of a draft, because even after you get all this information, then you have to do something with it. You have to figure out, how do we turn it into something actionable? And so that is another skill set. And so I had the pleasure of joining the Strategic Plan Steering Committee for 2 all-day retreats this summer. And I have to tell you, it was the best part of my summer. And I know that might sound geeky, like, strategic planning. Well, it wasn't better than the beach. But generally speaking, I mean it with a great deal of authenticity, because when I stepped into that room, I was coming as a guest. I was coming as a guest to hear what the committee has been working on, hear some of the synopsis of the themes that they were covering, participate in different table discussions to see more granular level of conversation. And what I found was a group of people that I felt like were inspired by what the possibility of CT State could become. And they had become very invested in trying to identify through the draft plan, the pillars, the goals and the strategies, what areas that we needed to focus on so that we could become the best version of ourselves. And when I was sitting back and observing them, I was really taken back by how committed they had become in that process. When I met them and I was saying, thank you for volunteering to be part of this process, it was a group of different people representing different stakeholder groups across the whole college, but they perhaps hadn't even realized what they had fully signed up for, because we're going through this for the first time. This is an inaugural strategic plan, and we're building this for the first time. When we became CT State, there was a need to have a transitional strategic plan, and I want to honor that work too, because that was put together to serve as a bridge to provide some guidance. But this is the first plan that represents us, because it is a product of us, and it's a product of people coming together with dialogue and data and debate and discussion to be able to create something that you will have an opportunity to see today. And that's what really touched my heart from this, is that I don't expect that we're going to get everybody to agree on anything, really. And that right there can be terribly difficult sometimes, and it can also be terribly rewarding, because it means that we're not sitting in an echo chamber just trying to hear yes to everything. We're actually talking things through and having the difficult discussions of reconciling our perspectives from all sorts of lenses that we bring at the college. And so for this, I'm really excited to have an opportunity to present a sample of this work that they have engaged in. So let me talk a little bit about how we arrived at this draft. The biggest thing that I want to share is that there was a tremendous amount of consumption of information. This didn't start off with, well, I think this or I experienced that. That wasn't solely what this process was. Certainly, people bringing their lived experiences is an important part of this process, as you will bring today in your feedback. But this was also very data informed. This was about looking at the demographic trends that we're experiencing in the state of Connecticut, we're experiencing in different parts of the state, that we're experiencing nationally. It's about looking at income and labor market data to understand what are the trends, what does it mean to have a livable wage job here, and what does it mean to be able to go to college, to actually move into a career that can change the trajectory for their families, for themselves. What does it mean for them to be able to move and transition into a career change that will better suit their needs and lifestyle with whatever phase of life they're at? So we looked at all of these things in addition to looking at CT State-specific data on early momentum and retention, completion, and success data. And members also looked at existing admissions and financial aid dashboards, different reports that we had on enrollment, employment, and economic impact. Of course, the transitional strategic plan that I mentioned. Also, looking at the 12 legacy plans from each of the campuses when each of them were independent colleges, as well as looking at some plans from peer institutions and seeing what those strategic plans look like at other institutions. And at the same time, they also deployed faculty and staff surveys and also student surveys, and had a chance to focus on what are some priorities that we're hearing and what are some strategic directions that people feel like we need to move in. And what do we need to do to fulfill our mission as CT State Community College? And so looking at that internally, but also then having an opportunity to gain feedback from our external stakeholders. That external piece also widened our lens a great deal. Having conversations about K-16 pathways, employer responsiveness, looking at stackable credentials, and different types of work-based readiness, including AI readiness, and looking at measures, including employment and wage advancement, and being able to look at the state of Connecticut's economic and educational priorities. That's a whole lot of information, which is available on a website if you want to recreate the experience of a strategic planning steering committee, because they did put everything on a website for you to be able to look at. And then I also had an opportunity to meet with several of our workforce partners and had an opportunity to talk with employers and talk with legislators and talk to partners across the state, whether it's other state agencies or organizations that are doing work in the education space, so that they could understand not only some thoughts about where we might be going, but also hear their thoughts about what they need from us, because we know that this work is all relational, and we want to be able to be in sync with other agencies' work on this as well. So there was no single data point, meeting, survey, campus, or voice that determined this plan. It is a product of the collective. And that's an important piece of this, because the ideas really came from all of you. It came from people across the campus. It came from students. It came from the external community. And those are the things that were inputs into this process. The next challenge was converting that broad body of evidence into a focused strategic plan. So I want to talk a little bit about how we went from all of this inquiry and data collection to forming some strategic pillars. So the committee used the SWOT analysis throughout the process to look at what each source revealed about our strengths and our weaknesses, what opportunities and threats existed for our community, and that work was guided by a few questions in particular. One, what does the evidence tell us about CT State today? Two, what will Connecticut need from us in the years ahead? And three, what do students need from us to meet their goals? And so there were some recurring themes that were the basis for forming some kind of collection of input from the data. And then that formed 5 themes teams that were working. And each of the teams had to justify their theme as a distinct and solution-oriented part of the process. And they had to identify the work and engage in some cross-pillar support and look at the conditions that are required for success, including evaluating the potential impact. And then also to tell Cabinet, what the leaders needed to know in regards to this work. So there was a tremendous amount that occurred in the refinement and the data collection. And then at the June Development Day, I mentioned that there were 2 retreats that I had attended. They looked at these drafts and they put them side by side and tested them for priorities and overlap and looking at different gaps that existed, as well as where the coherence is. And then together they were able to identify 4 interconnected pillars. And so these ideas were challenged by one another. They were debated and discussed. They were rewritten several times. They were combined. The order was shifted. Things were added. Things were removed. And so together, it was about coming up with a plan that could be negotiated among all of them with data to support that. And there wasn't universal agreement at every phase, and as I would expect for a college this size. But they were able to come and create a wonderful, workable plan that we have to be able to share with you today. So, as I mentioned, we're working in incorporating our strengths, our weaknesses, looking at the opportunities and threats. I do want to talk a little bit about some momentum that we have. The first is we're working towards the third consecutive year of enrollment growth. So that's a really good piece. Our retention has strengthened, and we have more students that are learning across multiple campuses and modalities than was possible under the former structure. Dual enrollment has increased 39% since the consolidation. We now serve 7,319 students. While summer credit enrollment increased 12% and winter credit enrollment increased 30%. We are also reaching more of our students across Connecticut and looking at the increasing needs of the people that we serve. And since the consolidation, our BIPOC credit enrollment is up 14%. Our first generation enrollment is up 8%. Enrollment among women is up more than 12%, and part-time enrollment is up more than 13%. That matters in a state where Latina and Hispanic communities and older populations are representing important areas of growth for us in the state. Our workforce continues to grow as well. Over the past 3 years, approximately 4,000 CT State credit graduates completed programs in high demand or priority fields, including education, green energy, manufacturing, information technology, and nursing, among others. You may have seen some press regarding our Northwell partnership, and this was one of the visible examples of our statewide efforts to make CT State align with combination of academic expertise and workforce capacity. So August 10th, we had a celebration event where we were signing our official partnership with Northwell Health at Norwalk Hospital. And this partnership is a workforce partnership that's aligning both our credit and our non-credit programs with Northwell's hiring needs and creating intentional pathways from education to employment. So this is going to serve students entering advanced or advancing in healthcare careers. Current Northwell students are looking to upskill or earn credentials and move up, and we're looking to engage 500 students in the first year of this opportunity. But we do know that momentum is not the same as completion. And so while we have some demonstrated focus areas that are giving us a stronger foundation, it doesn't eliminate issues that we have across our institution. We have issues such as inconsistency across the campuses. CT State, we want to have a consistent student experience as it relates to certain processes. Operational friction as we continue to work towards unifying ourselves. We have fiscal pressures that are very significant that we have to address. And we have a clear need for choices about where we choose to invest because we know that resources are limited. And so those choices matter because the environment around us is changing. And I just want to talk for a moment when we talk about the students that we serve and the state, a lot is changing. And we have to remember that because while consistency is important, adaptability is also important because the students today are not the same as the students 10 years ago or 20 years ago. They're changing as well, and we have to be responsive to those changes as well. So we have to look at the fact that we're facing a smaller traditional age, college age population. Our adult learners, our working students, our caregivers, and students that are moving in and out of education also need more flexibilities to navigate the pathways. And so on one hand, we need stability and continuity and consistency, and we also need flexibility because we know what many of our students are dealing with, and life outside of their academic life is also continuing to press on them in different ways. We have persistent gaps in access, persistence, completion, and post-completion outcomes that do require us to look beyond just aggregating progress and understanding where our students are thriving and where they're not, but more importantly, why and what is within our control. We know some things aren't in our control. Family member gets sick, something external happens. But when we look at what they're experiencing, we have to look at what is within our control and how we might be able to adjust to accommodate that. We also know that workforce needs and technology are moving very fast. I know every time I see something new in technology, I'm like, wow, it's just coming so quickly. The other day I was looking at a video, and it was students, med students, that were watching a robot do surgery. Not robot-assisted surgery, but actually the robot was conducting the surgery, and they were learning from the robot. So the world is wild. It's changing so quickly. There's times it feels like it changes so slowly, and then there's other times that things creep up on us very quickly. We also know, in talking to employers, one of the things that I heard the most consistently from my experiences with them is the need for us to be able to adjust to their timelines, that they can't necessarily come to us and say, we have this new need and it's going to take us 18 months before we put it together. In some cases, 6 months might not work with their timeline. So how are we able to work through our processes and also serve the audience of people that need our support because we're offering the workforce training for them? So that's important. The responsiveness of timelines was something that I heard. And also that we have to make sure that the graduates are prepared for occupations that are evolving through automation and through AI. And I combine those two because not everything is AI, but there is this whole growing field around automation and looking at essentially what I consider process improvement and efficiencies that we as CT State have an opportunity to take advantage of, and the world at large is also leveraging the new capabilities and skills that are there. So how are we able to respond to that, including making sure that those things are reflected in our academic programs? At the same time, we're facing real financial and operational constraints, and we can't assume that every idea is worthwhile. We have staffing requests, programs, processes, or wish lists that sometimes can be funded and sustained and sometimes not. And so we have to continue to look at our ability to prioritize, and having a strategic plan will allow us to align with that. But that reality does require hard choices. And so it means trying to decide what matters most, what sequencing will work, how do we align those resources accordingly, and being honest about what we're not going to be able to do right now. So if we're not intentional about those choices, that's when those circumstances often make the decision for us. So our charge is to figure out how we can be a little bit more nimble than we currently are without necessarily being reactive. And we want to be able to adapt quickly while at the same time protecting academic quality and as well as equity and being able to set ourselves up for long-term financial sustainability. So I want to talk a little bit about what the committee heard and what some of the evidence showed from our plan. When we look across campus engagement, surveys, shared governance, the environmental scan, SWOT analysis, as well as stakeholder conversations, there were certain real recurring themes, as well as some real tensions about how to best address them. Students need clear and more consistent navigation. Fewer handoffs, more predictable communication, coordinated support, meaningful relationships, and pathways that connect learning to their goals. When I was listening to the steering committee report on some of the summary of the data collection and their analysis, one of the things I was also reflecting on is that we have a model in higher education that we've had for decades, and it is related to having a lot of choice. And we associate choice as a really positive thing, that have people having options. There's some element of freedom in that. But what happens when too many choices becomes the barrier or becomes the block for students to figure out how they actually move forward? That's something we also have to think about. We have a lot of educators, faculty and staff in this room. Some of you have worked on dissertations around different aspects of student success. We have a lot of years of experience collectively at our college. And one of the things that we know can be a bit challenging is when people are stifled with too many options. I know if I just even look at sometimes the amount of choices in front of me. Let me take a really simple example of like going out to a restaurant. If I have 6 options in front of me, I can make a choice of what I want pretty easily. But if I've got to flip through 10 pages to try to decide what I want today, I find myself getting a little paralyzed sometimes of like, oh, I kind of want that, or maybe I want that. And next thing you know, I've asked the waiter or waitress to come back for a third time. I'm almost ready. So I think that we just have to think a little bit about some of our own assumptions for higher education and what we can do to continue to support our students being able to have the information that they need, to be fully informed, to have people that they engage in that discussion about their career path or the educational sequencing of their courses. But let's also make sure that we don't have too many options or things aren't too flexible, that sometimes that can be as paralyzing, or people are like, I don't have the space or cognitive bandwidth right now to do that. And sometimes people just want some of those choices made for them. We also heard a lot about employers wanting clarity around priorities. And for a lot of them, they were referencing, to be very candid, the experience of partnering with CT State over the last couple of years and just how difficult it's been with the consolidation and us kind of finding ourselves and trying to reorient ourselves and trying to figure out who the new point of contact is. And so they were kind of happy to meet us at this phase where they're like, okay, we feel like some of that's settling down now. So tell us what this looks like and how can we figure out how to best partner and work with you together. And that will then hopefully translate into one of their biggest requests is that they want faster responsiveness, both in the programs and in partnership formation. And they want to partner with us on pathways. Pathways is a huge theme, and we're looking at pathways from the perspective of career pathways. We're looking at pathways in terms of opportunities from an employer perspective and how their employees can feel a sense of a pathway to other job roles within that same organization. And so the idea of making those pathways easier to understand is important. And then connecting credentials. And so the concept of micro-credentialing and the stackable pathways, they all sync up together. I think we live in times where sometimes the idea of going for a pursuit of something that takes years in the making can feel very far away. Because whether you like it or not, we have become a society where there's this element of instant gratification. And we can't indulge all of that, but we do also have to recognize the changing societal construct in which we're operating in and offering education. And I'm sure English professors debate and discuss this all the time when I think about the idea of longer papers, shorter concepts, from a writing sample perspective. But I also, have become familiar with this acronym, TLDR. You're familiar with that? And for those of you that aren't, it stands for Too Long, Don't Read. And it's this concept I see popping up in newsletters now. And so it's like, here's the longer version for those of you that want to read the full report. And then here's the TLDR version for those that just kind of want the summary of it. And I see in this room at Housatonic like a lot of people chuckling because either you're consuming that, you're like, yes, that was made for me, or you're like, I can't believe we've become a society where we can't read a full book. Like it's just back and forth. And we feel that friction and pressure of constantly the demands on our time and how we can continue to both appreciate and show the students the value of deep immersive learning, which I believe so passionately in, and then also how we recognize that the amount of demands for people's attention and their cognitive bandwidth in a day is taxed so much more today than it ever has been because of the availability of internet, these short streams. I now see, you might see a longer video, let's say an interview on YouTube that's an hour and a half, but now they're slipping out these, just here's 3 minutes, here's the essence of it, or sometimes it's a teaser, which is also nice. But people consume information in all ways, and we have to continue to think about that and figure out how we respond to that. So I talked about students, employees, employers, and then communities in general, which is they expect access. This is what we were birthed in. Community college as an innovation was birthed in the idea of the access mission. And so access, opportunity, and public value, what does that all look like? So I'm gonna kind of go through and get us closer to showing you the plan, but the data piece is important, so let me just quickly focus on that. The strategic plan really only becomes real when we can define success, that we understand what our starting point is, that we assign ownership, we allocate resources, we align resources, and we monitor progress and make adjustments when the evidence says to make adjustments. It also requires trusted data. And I know our institutional research area has continued to develop important data points to serve as the institutional steward and being a reliable source of strategic plan data, having consistent definitions, appropriate disaggregation of data, accessible dashboards, which I know that JD has been doing a ton of presentations showing people these wonderful dashboards that have been created in IR, and also the transparency of reporting, which is what you have asked for. And it also requires stronger inputs and governance, and so we've got useful baselines. And there's still some things that CT State doesn't actually collect the information, but it's still important that we think about how we're going to measure it. We're not going to discard a goal simply because a measure isn't currently available. We have to work towards establishing baselines in some areas and identifying what those gaps are in consulting the subject matter experts for that respective topic, and then establishing the right definition so we can collect it. And then what I want to do is start by introducing the 4 pillars. So the first pillar is student success, access, and belonging. And this follows the student journey from the entry point and connection through learning, completion, transfer, career readiness, and life beyond CT state, or what we do call post-completion outcomes. The second pillar is workforce development and economic mobility. And this is focusing on translating education into relevant skills, careers, wage progression, mobility, and Connecticut's long-term competitiveness. As a college, we did an economic impact study, and now they're looking at how to do a larger one for the system as well. These start to understand our long-term competitiveness. The third pillar is people, culture, and community. And this is recognizing that our mission depends on our people and our relationships and the communication that we have with students and each other, and the shared identity that shape the experience of our students and employees. The fourth pillar is institutional stewardship and sustainability, addressing the resources, operations, technology, data, financial health, and accountability needed to sustain the other commitments that we have. These are not 4 separate plans or competing lanes. Student success is at the center. Workforce relevance expands meeting. Workforce expands to meet the relevant meaning and impact of success. And people and culture make the work possible. Stewardship gives us the capabilities to do that. A strategy in one pillar will often be dependent upon another one. So we're going to begin with the plan where it all begins, which is the student experience. So the promise of this pillar is straightforward. And what I really want you to think about in this stage, and take notes if you want, but I want you to start thinking about how you're reacting to this plan, because that's going to inform some of your dialogue as we engage in breakout sessions shortly. So the promise of this pillar is straightforward. Every student should be able to enter, connect, learn, and advance, regardless of campus, program, background, or modality. Our overall gains do not erase unequal outcomes. Black students' one-year retention remains 5 percentage points below the average, the overall rate. Latina and Hispanic graduation trails by 7 points. Pell recipient graduation rates trail by 5 points, and course passage gaps persist for non-traditional students and students of color. So goal 1 is addressing equitable access and barriers to success. That includes affordability, responsive scheduling, accessible services, and reducing avoidable friction before and after enrollment. Goal 2 focuses on a connected student experience. Students should not have to decipher or structure or receive fundamentally different guidance depending on where they encounter CT state. Consistent onboarding, advising, communication, and coordinated support are absolutely essential to their success. Goal 3 centers on belonging, engagement, and community through mentoring, peer connection, student organizations, early outreach, strong relationships with faculty and staff. Belonging is not an accessory to success. It is shaping whether students remain connected and where the challenges arise. Goal 4 is the academic center of our pillar. Faculty expertise, faculty-student relationships, relationship-centered teaching, high-impact practices, authentic learning, early academic support are central to what students learn and whether they see themselves as capable learners. Goal 5 connects the student experience to what comes next: completion, transfer, career readiness, paid work learning, pathways. And those pathways have to align with our academic, professional, and personal goals as well. So this pillar asks us to broaden how we understand success. Institutional measures matter, but students arrive, as we know, with different objectives. So the next one is workforce development and mobility. The promise of this pillar is that CT State will serve Connecticut's leading engine of economic mobility and a strategic partner for the state's workforce and economic future. We want to be the state's workforce provider. So we already produce hundreds of credit graduates in information technology, manufacturing, and nursing each year. And recent practical nursing expansion is increasing our capacity in a field of urgent statewide need, as we know. So Goal 1 calls for stronger alignment with documented state and regional labor market needs. That means using evidence and employer input to review programs, anticipate emerging fields, accelerate curriculum and hiring processes while protecting academic integrity. Goal 2 focuses on pathways to mobility, stackable credentials, clear pathway maps, seamless movement from non-credit to credit learning, paid internships and other internship opportunities, and routes to family-sustaining careers. Goal 3 is about deepening employer partnership and shared investment. Statewide and sector advisor structures can help us move away from transactional relationships to sustained talent pipelines in which employers, workforce boards, agencies, and the college all share responsibility and investment. Goal 4 expands participation among adult and lifelong learners, incumbent workers, veterans, displaced workers, and others who need flexible schedules, shorter on-ramps, credit for prior learning, and clear opportunities to return and also advance. New opportunities such as Workforce Pell is going to help more learners in short-term, high-value programs, but only if we have pathways that are understandable, eligible, and connected to advancement. So the key point is that completion matters. And a credential alone is not the full outcome. We need to have an understanding of employment, wage progression, career advancement, employer value, and long-term economic mobility. The state's scale is only possible and an advantage if we combine a consistent strategy with regional responsiveness. People, culture, and community. This pillar begins with a basic truth. CT State's ability to fulfill its mission depends on the people who support students every single day and the culture in which they do that work. The first goal is focused on institutional identity, culture, and community. Our identity includes both what we say about CT State and what students, employers, and partners repeatedly experience from us. Those two things should reinforce one another. We can be one college without being one indistinguishable place. The goal is shared identity, clear college-wide communication, and more consistent expectations while preserving the histories, the relationships, and the strengths of each of our campuses. Goal 2 is looking at addressing employee well-being and success, clarity about roles and workload, more effective communication, better coordination, disciplined review of processes and initiatives that might be creating some unnecessary burden or friction for employees. Goal 3 is addressing strategic alignment of human resources. We must better understand the workforce that CT State needs, reducing time to hire for critical positions, strengthening internal advancement, expanding professional development, and preparing employers for a responsible work in an AI-influenced environment. To sustain these commitments, the college must also think about how to strengthen and use its resources to operate as a single institution. So looking at the fourth pillar, we have institutional stewardship and sustainability. The promise of the pillar is to align people, time, money, technology, and effort with the priorities that create the greatest institutional and student impact. The first goal focuses on operational effectiveness and resource allocation. We need to identify high-friction processes, reduce unnecessary complexity, examine program and service impact, and connect planning and budget more directly. I think one of the things that I hear a lot when I'm out at the different campuses is when people are talking about operational effectiveness. And they're usually talking about processes that can be strengthened, enhanced, modified, and because it's creating a burden in the people doing the work. The next is goal 2, which is addressing financial stewardship and sustainability. This is understanding the cost drivers, using reserves responsibly, diversifying our revenue, strengthening grants and philanthropy and partnerships, as well as evaluating both return on investment as well as the impact to our mission. And the third is focused on responsible use of artificial intelligence. CT State needs clear policy and governance, ethical and secure practices, a stronger institutional knowledge framework, and a disciplined way to test whether emerging tools improve learning, service, efficiency, or decision-making. Stewardship is not simply about cost cutting. It's about sustainability, and that is not just about balancing the budget. It's about being able to protect our mission over time and how to make decisions with the limited resources that we have to our highest strategic priorities, and being transparent about the evidence behind those decisions. So you look at these 4 pillars, and this is our institutional commitment, that students will gain equitable access, meaningful connection, strong learning, and clear pathways to completion, transfer, careers, and whatever their own goals might be. Connecticut gains a stronger talent pipeline, responsive educational pathways, and a public college committed to economic mobility and statewide competitiveness. Our people gain greater clarity, support, professional growth, and shared purpose and community, with campuses' strengths remaining visible within one college. The institution gains operational discipline, financial stewardship, data capacity, technology, governance, accountability, and all are needed to sustain each other. That's the connected story of the plan. Opportunities for students, mobility for the state, support for our people, and stewardship of the institution that's entrusted to us. I know that is highly ambitious, but we have to have big goals. We don't want to set the bar too low. This is a very aspirational plan, and something that I'm excited that you'll have an opportunity to give some feedback to shortly. I want to talk a little bit about assessing the structure so that we can have a sustainable plan. We have to continue to evolve to be able to meet the current needs and the next phase of development. And that structure is about bringing 12 colleges together into CT State as a consolidated institution now. That's one college with 12 campuses and several instructional sites. We'll assess how the work is organized without presuming a particular outcome. The guideposts will be our mission, student impact, employee expertise, operational effectiveness, accountability, and financial reality. We're also going to double down on data governance and institutional capacity so that leaders and teams have trusted, timely information to guide decisions, understand impact, and measurable progress. Any structural change should strengthen our ability to impact the plan clearly, efficiently, and sustainably. Structure is not the strategy. It must enable the strategy. So to get to that point, we are bridging what we call year zero. I think I don't know if I have a slide for that. But let me talk a little bit about what year zero is. Actually, let me just skip. I think I just put it out of order. I'll come back to that. So year zero is the concept of how we're starting this plan now and what this means when we're still in the process of forming it. Year zero is an acknowledgement of meeting ourselves where we're at. The goal when we started this process was to be able to roll out the draft of the plan where we're at today and then be able to finalize that with stages through bringing it to the board and then be able to roll the plan out in January. But there are a couple things that happened along the way. Number one is we had an immersive amount of information that we looked at and said, we need a little bit more time to be able to work on that. The second is some people talked about how it just felt disconnected by having a strategic plan start in January when we have fiscal and academic years that really start mid-year. And so we thought, well, let's align all these things and give us the appropriate time to go through all the stages needed. So the first is that what this means is today we are seeking your input, and over the next couple of weeks we will also seek the input of other stakeholders. Students will have an opportunity to review the plan after the semester gets started. Employers will have an opportunity to review and other partner agencies. And then we will take that feedback. We are then going to work on modifying whatever pieces need modifying based on your input. And then we are going to start continuing to build the measurable aspects of the plan. So what the targets and the measures are. As I mentioned, some of those things we might not even have a baseline for because it wasn't something we are measuring. So we'll note that. We'll work towards a baseline, and then we will figure out some targets and aspirational targets. So we'll finish that work this semester. And then in January, we will have a refined plan, and then we'll start the process of bringing that to the board committees and get some of their input so that the plan can endorse that, the board that can endorse our plan. And this is the work of year zero. It's the readiness for an inaugural plan. It's a lot easier when you have an existing infrastructure in years or decades of working through strategic plans and having all of that data and the benchmarking and being able to modify what's worked and what hasn't and make adjustments. But when you're having to build it from scratch, then it's a different experience. And year zero acknowledges where we're at in that process. I think I covered most of this, that we're really engaged in the fall, the spring. I mentioned that we're going to set some of the priorities and common measures, and we'll also establish ownership and other aspects, data infrastructure, and the pieces that we need foundationally to support the plan. And so this draft is really an opportunity to get your input. And as I mentioned earlier, we have, and all you have to do is Google CT State Strategic Planning, and you will get the entire website that has all of the documentation that the steering committee looked through and all the data and all the other presentations and so forth. It's pretty impressive and extensive if you're someone that wants to dig into the data. And then also you obviously have the strategic plan. The other piece that I want to mention is, we come together, welcome faculty and seasonal staff back and start our semester, but what I know is really on everyone's mind is, how am I getting my syllabus organized? How am I getting, the materials ready for the students that are coming to make last minute changes? Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff that everybody is engaged in from today until the start of semester, and probably through EdDrop as well. So we wanted to find a balance of being able to share the plan with you today, provide some opportunity for you to have some input and dialogue with your colleagues for today, and then give us feedback from your breakout sessions. And then we wanted to essentially let you focus on the start of the semester, which is what I know everybody wants. And then we will send out some reminders for you after you get through the beginning of the semester to be able to go back, review the plan in more detail. You might be thinking about things that were seeded today, but you hadn't really fully thought about that until you had a chance to contemplate it. And then there'll be a survey that you have that will allow you to give us more substantial feedback. So you'll have opportunities in both ways. For those of you that, everybody has different job roles, and some of you that you've just been busy for the last few weeks and now this period lightens up, well, you've got the opportunity to start giving us feedback right now. And those of you that need to hit pause until you get students settled and you're settled into the start of the semester, then you can give us feedback after. We're looking for feedback on, I believe it's September, is it 17th? Is that a Friday? Meg, is that a Friday?
No, it's Thursday, the 18th.
Oh, September 18th. I was close. So that's when we will be looking for the last bit of feedback. So we will nudge people throughout that process. But there was an email that was sent this morning from Tom that has a link to the breakout exercises. So before I get into that, I just kind of want to go back to the last bit of updates. Let's see. There's a message on there. Can I move it now? Here we go. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So I want to talk, so I wanted to cover first and foremost the bulk of the strategic planning process. And so shortly we will transition to the breakout rooms. But the last part of my remarks for today is I wanted to provide some positional updates. As I mentioned earlier, Provost Hynek will be retiring at the end of the year, so we will be doing a search for her position. And as we do that search, I will be using a search firm for that. And so that's going to be a big search. It's going to take the majority of the year. We will start the process of all the things that we typically do, getting a search committee together, getting representation from Senate, and getting a really good diverse committee for that. What I want to do before I post that position is I want to take a look at a couple of areas to think about ways that we can continue to make sure that they're aligned to be able to help support the direction of the strategic plan. And so a couple of those areas that I'm going to take a look at, one is going to be workforce. Clearly that is a big theme within the strategic plan. And it's going to be really important that we're positioned, especially as I mentioned, related to the next position that Dr. Michelle Coach was exiting for her presidency. And so we will be naming an interim for that position, and then, of course, figuring out how to permanently fill that role. But back to the provost position, Workforce is one of the areas that I want to take a look at. Another area that I want to take a look at is IR, because so much of the work that we've had to rely on and will continue to rely on in that is certainly database. And so I want to make sure that IR is set up to have what they need in that process. And then the other is dual enrollment and concurrent enrollment. As I mentioned before, I'm one of 4 representatives from CSCU that's on the Governor's Pathway Commission. And this Pathways Commission is really looking at opportunities for students to start experiencing college while in high school, and then figuring out also ways that they can move into clear pathways that can create stackable opportunities and credentials. And then for those that are college going, can start at CT State, hopefully, and then transition for those that would be transferring to one of the universities or four-year colleges. So I want to look at those areas just before we post that position. I hope that we'll be able to name the Dean of STEM interim soon. I know the provost is working on that, since that's a position that reports to her. The next one is I wanted to mention for marketing. I know that there's been a lot of feedback about things that they'd like to see marketing do or do differently. And so I wanted to remind everyone that we have a position that is already budgeted for and was already approved, and we are going to look to post that position. And so that's going to really help with some of the big goals that we have in terms of telling our story and also being able to market the college and the communities that we serve. And then also related to that, I just wanted to remind people that we budgeted for local campus marketing positions, and those positions are soon to be searched. And your campus presidents are leading those searches or delegating a search team to fill those positions. And then the next one is talking about strategic planning lead. This is an incredible next step that we have towards moving the college forward. And in that regard, most institutions, as they're familiar with strategic planning, have a person. We haven't had that focus because we haven't had a college strategic plan that has been as robust as this. So what I wanted to do is I didn't want to create another position. So what I thought I would do is have a temporary role, reassigned time to be able to continue to do this work. I'm thinking like a three-year time frame, because that will put us halfway through our plan when we have an opportunity to assess whether that's just a bridge or it's something that is needed to continue. And so we'll do that, and I'm just working through to figure out if that's going to be appointed or an internal search. So there's going to be more information to come on that. And then the last one I wanted to talk about is another interim position that we have currently is our Vice President of DEI. And right now, Dr. Arnita Walls is serving as the interim for us. And so for that position, I wanted to share a little bit of the data that I've been looking at from that respective area. And one of the things that I noticed about this is, and I'm thinking deeply about this position because as we go to search for a replacement, then I take a look at the job description and try to see, is this in alignment with what the work of the division does? And in this case, I can't say it really does, because one of the things that this division really does is focus, the majority of its work is on compliance. we have a person within that division that is responsible for our DEI work. But by and large, this is really a compliance role. And I think that alignment is really important so that we are attracting the person that is going to be in alignment with the job duties that we have. And so as a result, we are going to rename this division the Division of Institutional Integrity and Compliance. And I wanted to just share a small bit of data about what is happening in terms of the workload that we're dealing with in that area and the areas of focus that they have. They've been definitely the idea of focusing on more how we can position ourselves to address the increased auditing demands, the increased need for compliance, and the need to be more responsive in all the cases that are going through this division is part of the work of aligning this. So it's actually not really changing any of the focus of this division. It's simply naming what this division already does, and this is what they do. So, that is going to be renamed Institutional Integrity and Compliance, and then that will be more congruent with the skill set and the areas of focus that we have. I am still very committed to DEI, and that work is still continuing. We are not making any change with that in terms of the priority it has. And I know that we have not only the DEI position, but we also have the DEI Coordinating Council. I've met with them periodically and plan to continue to do so, especially in alignment with the strategic plan, and I'm trying to identify some of the other opportunities because there is a lot of focus on equity within this plan, and I want us to stay focused on that college-wide. So that is the last piece of the updates I wanted to give, and I just wanted to thank everybody. Again, this work is representative of the entire community, and whether you played a role in talking to one of your colleagues, or you were giving feedback directly into the plan, or you're serving on steering committee, I know that your voice has really mattered, and I know, and that's why when I was talking to the steering committee, I said, I need you to be prepared that this is going to look different after we have the engagement at this level, because that's taking in a whole nother set of information. And so I look forward to seeing what feedback that you have for us. Please be candid and thoughtful, as you always are, and we look forward to having some more information to continue to refine this process. As I mentioned, Tom had sent out the information for the breakout sessions with a link. And so you each on your respective campuses have your respective instructions on how to transition, I'm sure with a brief break, and then to whatever breakout rooms that you're in. I wish you much engagement and discussion in the next phase. And more importantly, I wish you a great start to the new academic year. Thank you for everything that you each do, and let's start this year off strong. Have a great day.